The video screen at the United Nations Assembly showed 10 alien ships entering Earth's orbit. They were massive, each one the size of a mountain floating above the clouds. The room filled with nervous voices and worried faces. People around the world watched on television, wondering what would happen next. Ambassador Grace stood in the center of the assembly hall, watching the ships with calm eyes. She had prepared for this moment for 3 years. When the first signal came from space, humanity knew the universe was not empty. They had always suspected it, but knowing and confirming were different things. The lead ship sent a message. A voice, translated into English through humanity's computers, spoke clearly. The Galactic Council had decided to make contact with Earth. Humanity was invited to receive official acknowledgement from the galaxy's governing body. The ships were coming to establish formal diplomatic relations. Grace turned to the other ambassadors sitting around the table. Some looked excited, others looked afraid. Grace looked determined. She raised her hand to request silence. "We need to be smart about this," she said simply. "We don't know what they want or what they expect. Everyone stay calm. We are not in danger. We are meeting new people." The aliens landed at a neutral zone outside the city. A platform had been built weeks ago when humans first received the signal. The structure was simple and strong, made of steel and concrete. 50 soldiers stood nearby, not as a threat, but as security. 20 diplomatic staff joined Grace as she walked toward the meeting point. The first alien to step out of the ship shocked everyone who saw it. It was tall, almost 3 meters high. Its skin was gray like stone. It had 4 arms and 2 eyes that glowed with a dull purple light. The translator device around its neck began to speak as soon as it saw humans. "I am representative of the Empire and senior voice of the Galactic Council. You are the species known as humans from the planet Earth." Did not smile. His voice was deep and flat. "The Council has chosen to offer you membership in the galactic community. This is a generous decision. Many species waited centuries for such an offer." Grace stepped forward. She was a tall woman with black hair and dark eyes. She wore a simple gray suit and stood very straight. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "We thank you for this acknowledgement. I am Ambassador Grace, speaking for all humanity. We are honored to meet the galactic community. But before we discuss membership, I have questions. Where has the Council been? Humanity has been sending signals into space for 70 years. We sent mathematics, music, greetings in many languages. Why did no one answer?" Was quiet for a moment. This was not the response he had expected. Other council members began stepping out of the ships. They were all different shapes and sizes. Some had many eyes, some had no eyes, some were made of what looked like crystal or fire. But they all had the same expression, surprise. "Your signals were received," said. "But the Council needed time to study your species. We needed to understand if you were capable of understanding galactic law. The Council protects all species. We cannot simply accept every species without careful consideration." Grace nodded slowly. She had expected something like this. She had prepared for it. "I understand," she said. "So humanity has been waiting. We have been waiting for approval. But we did not wait for permission to grow. 53 years ago, humanity sent its first probe to the moon. 40 years ago, we sent humans to walk on the moon. 30 years ago, we began to build a station there. 20 years ago, we started mining minerals from the moon. 15 years ago, we sent humans to Mars. 7 years ago, we established a permanent colony there. 3 years ago, we sent explorers to the ice moons of Jupiter. Today, we have over 12,000 humans living on Mars and another 5,000 on other worlds in our solar system." The alien delegation became very quiet, stepped closer to Grace. His purple eyes grew brighter. "This is not possible," he said. "You have only recently achieved basic space travel. You cannot have done this without guidance, without technology from more advanced species." "We did it ourselves," Grace said. "We built every rocket, we designed every ship. We trained every person who went into space. We did not ask for help because no one was answering our calls, so we stopped calling for help. We started helping ourselves." One of the other aliens spoke up. It was smaller than, with skin that looked like blue glass. "This human is challenging the Council's authority," it said. "This is disrespectful behavior." Grace did not step back. She did not look afraid. She looked the alien in the eye and spoke clearly. "I am not being disrespectful. I am being honest. Humanity has always built its own path. We did not wait to be told what we could do. We did not ask anyone to tell us we were allowed to dream. We simply dreamed, and then we made those dreams real. That is what humans do. Raised one of his four hands, the other aliens became silent. He studied Grace for a long time. The morning sun was bright on his gray face. The Council has an offer for humanity, said. You will join the galactic community, but in a junior position. You will have a voice in council meetings, but only about matters that affect your own world. Decisions about galactic policy, trade routes, and military matters will be made by the older species. You will follow council law. You will accept the wisdom of civilizations millions of years older than your own. In exchange, you will receive technology, protection, and peace. Grace felt the weight of everyone watching her, the soldiers behind her, the diplomats beside her, the billions of humans watching on screens across the world. She knew what she was about to say would change everything. We appreciate the offer, she said quietly. But humanity declines. We will not accept a junior position. We will not ask for permission to lead our own people. We will not accept laws made without our voice. If the Galactic Council wants to trade with us, we are interested. If you want to be our friends, we welcome friendship. But we will not bow to any authority that does not ask for our consent. The assembly room back at the United Nations exploded in noise. Some ambassadors cheered. Others looked shocked. World leaders debated what Grace had said. Humanity had just rejected the most powerful government in the galaxy. His eyes grew very bright. He was not angry, but something had changed in his face. It looked like respect mixed with something else, something like fear. You understand that this decision has consequences, said. The Council does not accept rejection. We understand, Grace said. But Earth has faced many challenges. We are not afraid of consequences. We are afraid of losing ourselves. Turned back to the ships. The other council members followed. But before the ships took off, he sent one final message to Grace. The Council will discuss your response. There will be a decision soon. I suggest you prepare your people, Ambassador. The galaxy does not accept defiance easily. As the massive ships rose into the sky and disappeared into space, Grace felt Captain Daniel step up beside her. He was the military commander of Earth's space forces. He was tall and strong, with gray eyes and a face that had seen many difficult decisions. What do we do now? Daniel asked quietly. The three battle cruisers appeared above Earth without warning. They took positions in a triangle, each one hovering above different continents. The ships were gray and sharp, built for war, built to destroy. People on the ground looked up and felt fear move through their hearts like ice water. Captain Daniel stood in the command center deep beneath a mountain in Colorado. Hundreds of screens showed him the ships. Hundreds of soldiers waited for his orders. He had trained for this his whole life, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The fate of every human being rested on the decisions he made in the next few hours. A message came from the lead ship. The voice filled the command center. Humans of Earth, the Galactic Council has made its final decision about your species. You have shown disrespect. You have rejected the Council's authority. This is not acceptable. You will surrender immediately. You will give us all advanced technology that you have developed. You will accept a government that answers to the Council. You have 48 hours to comply. After that time, this world will be destroyed. Every human will be eliminated. This is your only warning. The command center was completely silent. Officers looked at each other. Some looked like they wanted to cry. Others looked like they were ready to fight. Daniel took a long breath and pressed the communication button. This is Captain Daniel of Earth's military forces. We do not accept your demands. Earth will not surrender. We will not give up our people or our freedom. If you want to take what we have built, you will have to come and take it from us. He cut off the transmission. Around him, soldiers stared. Then someone started moving, then someone else. The command center came to life. This was not a time for fear. This was a time for action. Get me every satellite that can carry a weapon, Daniel said. Get me the numbers on our drone fleet. Get me our best engineers. We have 48 hours to make ourselves dangerous. Commander Hayes was Daniel's second in command. She was a brilliant woman with red hair and a sharp mind. She had studied every space battle from human history. She knew how humans had always won against larger forces. They won through cleverness. They won through speed. They won through refusing to fight the way bigger enemies expected them to fight. We cannot win a direct battle, said. Their ships are faster. Their weapons are more powerful. Their shields are better than anything we have, but we can be unpredictable. We can attack in ways they do not expect. Daniel nodded. This was exactly what he had been thinking. What do we do? He asked. Pointed to a map showing the three ships. They are in static positions. They are powerful, but they are also slow. They are built to respond to threats they can see. But what about threats they cannot see? What about electromagnetic pulses? What about coordinated attacks from multiple directions at once? What about attacking their sensors before they can even understand what is happening? Daniel felt something move in his chest. It was not hope. It was determination. He had studied history. He had learned that humans were good at exactly these kinds of problems. Humans were good at fighting when they had nothing else to lose. For 24 hours, every engineer on Earth worked on the same project. They took civilian satellites and modified them. They added weapons. They added code. They worked in factories and laboratories and underground bunkers. They did not sleep. They did not stop. They built. On the surface, people watched the sky nervously. Children asked their parents if they were going to die. Parents tried to comfort them, but many adults did not feel comforted themselves. Some people prayed. Some people gathered with loved ones. Some people got ready to fight. Daniel received word from Grace. "Do what you think is right," she said. "Humanity's future is in your hands now. Make us proud." At hour 46 of the deadline, Daniel gave the order. The coordinated attack was launched. The first strike hit the communication satellites of the ships. A pulse of electricity, sent through signals instead of weapons, disabled their ability to talk to each other. The three ships suddenly could not coordinate. They could not share information. They were alone. The second strike came from satellites above each ship. Electromagnetic pulses, powerful and sudden, damaged the shields. The shields were advanced, but the pulses were designed specifically to overload them. For 5 minutes, the ships were exposed. The third strike came from smaller drones, piloted by some of Earth's best pilots. The drones were not very strong, but there were hundreds of them. They came from all directions at once. They were too many to target, too fast to predict. Humans had learned in their own wars that speed and numbers could beat power. David Martin was a fighter pilot. He flew a drone shaped like a sharp arrow. He had flown before in wars on Earth. He knew how to move fast. He knew how to stay alive. He moved his drone through the space above Earth like he was dancing. His weapons hit the lead ship's sensor array. The array exploded in sparks and fire. The ships tried to fight back. They launched missiles and energy weapons, but they could not see where the attacks were coming from. They could not communicate with each other. They were confused and lost. And humans, facing what seemed like impossible odds, did what they always did. They found a way forward. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. 3 ships, the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, were disabled. Their shields were down. Their weapons were damaged. Their command systems were offline, but they were not destroyed. Daniel had given strict orders. We do not kill unless we must. We are not invaders. We are defenders. The command center at the flagship sent an emergency message. This was different from the first message. This voice sounded shocked, sounded afraid. "What is happening? What have you done to us?" Daniel sent a message back, his voice calm and strong. "We defended ourselves. Your ships are disabled but not destroyed. We are sending assistance. We are sending repair materials and medical help, because we are not your enemies. We are a people who simply want to be left alone to build our own future." In the hours after the battle, humanity sent supplies to the disabled ships. They sent doctors. They sent engineers who helped repair the damage. The crews were shocked. They had expected to be killed. Instead, they were being helped. Sent a message directly to Grace. His voice was different now. It was not angry, it was thoughtful. "How did you do this?" he asked. "You have no advanced military doctrine. You have no council weapons. You have only been in space for 70 years, yet you destroyed 3 of our battle cruisers." Grace stood in the command center beside Daniel. She answered the question honestly. "We destroyed your ships because you left us no choice. We were creative because we had to be. We were fast because we had nothing to lose. We were merciful because we are not like you. We do not kill for power. We do not fight for control. We fight to protect our families and our world. That is something your galaxy has forgotten." There was a long silence, then spoke again. "The Council will need to discuss this. You have surprised us, humans. That does not happen often. I will return to the Council and tell them what I have witnessed. I will tell them that humans are more dangerous than we realized, not because of your weapons, but because of who you are." The 3 ships, repaired and restocked with supplies provided by humanity, left Earth's orbit. They began their journey back to the Galactic Council's headquarters. As Daniel watched them disappear into space, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had survived, but he knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The Galactic Council would not accept defeat easily. Stepped beside him. The signal came 3 months after the ships returned home. It came from a hidden location, encrypted and dangerous. Grace was in her office when she received it. The message was simple but shocking. We want to talk to you, human, not as enemies but as potential allies. We represent the species. We have watched what you did to the Council. For the first time in 3,000 years, we see a chance at freedom. Please respond. Grace read the message 5 times before responding. She knew this was a turning point. Helping another species fight against the Galactic Council would mean committing Earth to a larger war. It would mean risking everything humanity had built. She called Daniel and her top advisors into the office. The room filled with serious faces. This was not a decision one person could make. If we help them, said the economic advisor, we declare ourselves enemies of the entire Galactic Council. Every species loyal to the Council will see us as a threat. We will be fighting a war across the galaxy, not just defending our own world. If we don't help them, said, we say that we only care about ourselves. We become something we said we would never become. We become people who accept the strong crushing the weak as long as it does not affect us. Grace looked at them both. She knew they were right. This was the real test, not a military test, a moral one. What do we know about she asked. A young officer named pulled up information. There had been a free species once. 3,000 years ago, they were powerful and independent, but the Empire wanted to control their world because it had valuable minerals. They attacked. They conquered, they enslaved. For 3,000 years, lived under control, they built the ships, they mined the minerals, they lived as second-class beings in their own solar system. Rebellion had been crushed many times, hope had been destroyed many times. But the news of humanity's victory over the battle cruisers had spread through the galaxy. It meant something important. It meant that the Galactic Council could be defeated. It meant that the strong were not invincible. It meant that the time for freedom might finally have come. Grace made her decision. She stood up and looked at everyone in the room. Get me a secure channel to I want to know everything about them. I want to know what they need, and I want to know what they are willing to risk. The response from the leader came within hours. His name was, he was old and wise, and he had been waiting his entire life for an opportunity like this. We do not ask you to fight our war for us, said. We ask for help, we ask for knowledge, we ask for proof that another species has successfully stood against the Council. Show us how to be brave, show us how to be strong, help us believe that freedom is possible. Grace sent Daniel to meet with in secret. Daniel took a small ship and flew to a hidden meeting point in an asteroid field. He met face to face for the first time. He was tall and beautiful in a way that seemed alien. His skin was like bronze metal. His eyes were large and wise. When he moved, it was with the grace of someone who had survived a very long time. You are willing to help us even though your people are safe? Asked. Daniel nodded. My people understand something that maybe the galaxy has forgotten. We understand that freedom is not something you get from others. Freedom is something you take. Freedom is something you fight for. And sometimes, helping others fight for their freedom is the only way to ensure that your own freedom will survive. Looked at Daniel with deep respect. He reached out one hand and placed it on Daniel's shoulder. Then the people will stand with Earth. We will fight beside you, not because you are stronger, but because you showed us how to be strong. Over the next year, humanity sent advisors to They sent technology. They sent plans for building better weapons. They sent training for soldiers who had never been allowed to become soldiers. Most importantly, they sent hope. The rebellion on the world was not a quick victory. It was long and hard and painful. But they had something they had never had before. They had help. They had proof that victory was possible. They had a vision of a free future. Other species watched this rebellion. Species that had also suffered under Galactic Council control began to think about freedom. What if they also rebelled? What if they also reached out to humanity for help? Though a species enslaved for 800 years reached out to Earth. Then kept as servants for 2,000 years. Then forbidden from developing their own technology for 1,000 years. One by one, species that had accepted their chains began to fight to break them. And every one of them was in contact with Earth. Every one of them received knowledge and help and support. The Galactic Council was losing control, sent a message directly to Grace. His tone was angry now, his patience was gone. You are destabilizing the entire galactic order. You are turning species against their rightful rulers. You are causing chaos and war across billions of worlds. This will end, human. You and everyone on your pathetic planet will answer for what you have done. Surrender yourself and all human leadership immediately, or we will destroy Earth completely. You have 1 week. Grace was not afraid. She was calm. She sat down and she recorded a message that would be broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. Her voice was steady and strong. I am Ambassador Grace of the planet Earth. I speak to every species in this galaxy. The Galactic Council has threatened to destroy my world because we believe in freedom, because we believe that no species should rule over another, because we believe that every people has the right to build their own future. Earth's seat was always empty because we were never meant to ask for permission. We were never meant to bow to power. We were meant to stand. We were meant to fight. We were meant to show you all that another way is possible. I will not surrender. My people will not surrender. We will fight for our freedom. We will stand with every other species that wants to be free. We will not stop until the Galactic Council understands that the age of conquest is over. The age of freedom is beginning. The message spread like fire across the galaxy. Species that were still loyal to the Council heard it and began to doubt. Species that were rebelling heard it and felt their courage grow stronger. The Council was divided now. Some wanted to attack Earth immediately. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to abandon the Council entirely and join the growing movement for freedom. Called for an emergency council meeting. The meeting lasted for 3 days. There was shouting. There was anger. There were threats. But when it was over, the Galactic Council was broken. It could no longer hold itself together. The first dominoes had fallen. Others would follow. Humanity had started something that could not be stopped. The war for galactic freedom had truly begun, and Earth stood at the center of it. And on every world where rebellion was starting, leaders looked to Earth and to Grace. They looked to her as proof that standing up to power was not hopeless. They looked to her as proof that a small species, a young species, could change the entire galaxy. The attack on Earth came in waves. The Galactic Council had gathered every ship it could command. They came from multiple directions at once, trying to overwhelm the planet's defenses. The first strike hit at sunrise. Explosions lit up the sky over 3 continents. Daniel was in the command center when the attacks began. He watched his screens show destruction and fire and death, but he did not freeze. Humanity had learned thousands of years ago how to survive when everything was falling apart. They had learned this from their own wars, from their own conflicts, from the times they had nearly destroyed themselves. Activate all civilian shelters, he said calmly. Get every person to safety, prepare the defense grid, get medical teams into position, move now. The world moved. Millions of humans ran toward shelters. Families held each other close in underground bunkers. Children asked what was happening. Parents told them to be brave. Cities were burning, buildings fell. But humanity had built those buildings to survive. Deep underground, power plants and water systems and food storage had been prepared. The shelters were strong. They had been built to last. Above the chaos, the space battle raged. The alliance between Earth, and the other free species was smaller than the Council fleet. But it was faster. It was more willing to take risks. It was more willing to fight like humanity had always fought, with creativity and speed and absolute determination. But the Council had power that no alliance could match. They had numbers. They had technology developed over millions of years. They had the will to destroy because to them this was not a war. This was putting down a rebellion. This was maintaining order. Cities burned on Earth. The command center received reports of millions dead. Daniel heard these reports and felt pain, but he did not stop fighting. This was war. This was the cost of freedom. Grace was not in a shelter. She was in a transport moving between underground cities. She was talking to people. She was listening to their fears. She was sharing her own fear with them, but she was not asking them to surrender. A young mother named held her 2 children in a shelter in North America. The walls shook from explosions above. The children were crying. Was not crying. She was being strong for them. She held them close and whispered to them. We are going to survive this. Humans have always survived. We have faced worse things. We have always found a way forward. You are strong. You are brave. You are going to live to see a free galaxy. I promise." The children believed her because she believed it. That was the power humanity had. That was the thing the Galactic Council did not understand. The battle in space lasted 3 weeks. The Council's fleet was larger, but the Alliance fleet was refusing to be destroyed. Every time the Council thought they had won, they found themselves under attack from a direction they did not expect. They used tactics they had learned in their thousand-year struggle against control. They had weapons that had been hidden for generations. The humans had speed and unpredictability. Gradually, the Council's advantage began to shrink. They were losing ships. They were losing the will to fight. Some species in the Council, watching the battle, began to understand that they were on the wrong side, that maybe freedom was worth fighting for, that maybe the time had come for change. Daniel received word that the fleet had broken through the Council's blockade around their home world. They were defending themselves now, not just hopping to be defended. They had destroyed 4 Council command ships. They had successfully freed 3 allied worlds from Council control. But on Earth, the destruction continued. The Council wanted to break humanity's will. They wanted to show the galaxy what happened when you them. They failed to understand humanity. Humanity did not have a single will that could be broken. Humanity was millions of separate wills, all determined, all refusing to surrender. When one city fell, the people in another city fought harder. When one region was destroyed, the people in another region refused to give up. The broadcast from Earth showed not death and surrender, but survival and determination. A man rebuilding a shelter, a woman organizing supplies, a child drawing pictures of a free future. These images spread across the galaxy. Every species watching saw the same thing. They saw people who refused to break. They saw people who believed that something better was possible. The who had first come to Earth was aboard the flagship of the Council fleet. He watched the reports from the battle. He watched the reports from Earth. He understood, finally, what humanity was. Humanity was not a species that could be conquered. Humanity was not a species that could be broken through force. Humanity was a species that grew stronger when threatened. Humanity was a species that believed in something more important than survival. Humanity believed in freedom. Called a secret meeting with his closest advisors. "We cannot win this war," he said. "We thought we could destroy humanity and force the other species back into control, but we have failed. And if we continue this war, all of us will fall. The Council is ending. The question now is whether we end with dignity or whether we are destroyed completely." His advisors were silent. They knew he was right. "I am going to contact Grace," said. "I am going to offer something the Council has never offered before. Peace. Not the kind where the strong rule the weak. Real peace. Peace between equals." The communication was sent through a private channel. When Grace answered, she was in a shelter with refugees. Her clothes were torn. Her face was dirty, but her voice was steady. "This is Ambassador Grace." "This is," came the response. "I am calling to end this war, not because the Council is ready to accept defeat, but because I am ready to accept change. The Galactic Council no longer serves the galaxy. It only serves itself. I am ready to dissolve it." Grace listened carefully. "What are you proposing?" she asked. "I am proposing something new," said. "A galactic federation, not a council. Every species has equal voice. Every species has equal power. No species dominates another. Decisions are made together, not forced from above. Is this something humanity could accept?" Grace was quiet for a long time. She thought about all the people who had died. She thought about the cities in ruins. She thought about the pain that could have been avoided if the Council had simply listened from the beginning. But she also thought about the future. A future where all species were free. A future where humanity was not special or superior, but equal. A future where the strong did not rule the weak. "Yes," she said simply, "humanity can accept this." The broadcast was sent to every world in the galaxy, announced his proposal. The Galactic Council would dissolve. A new federation would form. All species would have equal power. Some council members refused. Some wanted to continue fighting. But many others were tired. They were tired of war. They were tired of being the police force of the galaxy. They were ready for something different. One by one, other species agreed to the proposal. The ancient crystal beings agreed. The energy beings agreed. The species that had always feared change agreed because they understood that the alternative was complete destruction. On Earth, the battles stopped. The bombs stopped falling. The shelters began to empty. People came out into a 1 year after the end of the war. The first session of the Galactic Federation was held in a new building. The building had been constructed by workers from every species. Humans worked beside crystal beings and energy forms and beings of shapes and sizes that had no names in any human language. The main chamber was circular. Around its edge were seats for every species in the galaxy. 143 different species had joined the Federation. The table was round with no head and no beginning. Every seat had equal view. Every seat had equal power. Grace sat in Earth's seat. She was older now, worn by the war and the weight of decisions that had affected billions of lives. But her eyes were still clear. Her voice was still strong. Sat in the seat. He was no longer the representative of a conquering empire. He was one voice among many. Around him sat and beings of every description. The first motion came from himself. He stood up and looked around the table. The room became completely silent. Everyone knew this moment was important. "I want to acknowledge something," said. His purple eyes were still bright, but now they carried sadness and understanding. "For millions of years, the Empire ruled over other species. We told ourselves we were bringing order. We told ourselves we were bringing peace. But we were bringing control. We were bringing domination. We were wrong." He paused and looked directly at Grace. "This Federation exists today because one species refused to accept our rules. One species looked at the most powerful government in the galaxy and said no. Humans showed us that there was another way. Humans showed us that the strong do not have to rule the weak. Humans showed us that freedom is possible." Grace stood up. She did not look proud or superior. She looked humble and thoughtful. "They are not alone in carrying guilt," she said. "Humanity also has a history of one group controlling another. We have our own wars, our own slavery, our own times when we believed that might made right. We are not better than you. We simply learned a different way. And we learned it the hard way through pain and suffering and loss." She moved to the center of the circle and looked at every being in the room. "I want to propose the first law of the Galactic Federation. Every species has the inherent right to self-determination. Every species has the right to govern itself. No species shall ever again be subordinate to another. All decisions affecting multiple worlds shall be made together. All voices shall be heard. All beings shall have equal power." The vote was called. It was unanimous. Every species voted yes. Even those who had lost power in the old council, even those who had benefited from the old system. Everyone understood that a better way had been found. The celebration lasted 3 days. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years stood together and talked about peace. Shared food with. Soldiers stood beside humans and told stories of the war. Young beings of different species played together, not understanding why their parents had ever fought. On the final day of the celebration, Grace was invited to visit the sector of the station. Was waiting for her. He was holding a small object made of metal and light. "This is for you," said, handing it to Grace. "This is the symbol of a free. For 3,000 years we wore chains. Your people showed us how to break them. This is our thanks." Grace held the object carefully. It was beautiful. It was powerful. It represented something that could never be taken back now. "You saved yourselves," Grace said. "We just showed you that it was possible. The strength, the courage, the will to be free that came from inside you." Grace left the Federation chamber and walked to an observation window. From here, she could see the assembly station floating in space. Around it, ships from hundreds of species were docked. Below, the great blue sphere of Earth hung in the darkness. She thought about the journey. She thought about the moment when she had stood on that platform and told that Earth would not bow. She thought about the war. She thought about the millions who had died. She thought about the families who had survived. Daniel came and stood beside her. He was no longer the military commander. He had returned to Earth to his wife and his 2 children, but he still carried the weight of war in his eyes. "We did it," Daniel said simply. "We did," Grace agreed. "But it cost everything. It cost millions of lives. It cost the destruction of cities. It cost pain and suffering and loss." "And what did we gain?" Daniel asked. Grace looked at the Earth below. She thought about the billions of humans living there. She thought about the future they would inherit. She thought about the young people who would grow up in a galaxy where they were free, where they were equal, where they could dream of anything. We gain the right to choose our own path, she said. We gain the knowledge that we do not have to wait for permission from anyone. We gain the understanding that freedom is not given, it is taken. And we learn that sometimes the most important gift you can give to others is proof that freedom is possible. Found her at the window. He stood beside her, looking down at Earth. Your world is beautiful, he said. We should have listened to your signals. We should have answered. We would have saved ourselves a great deal of pain. Perhaps, Grace said. Or perhaps we needed this journey. Perhaps the galaxy needed to understand that a young species, barely into space, could change everything. Perhaps the galaxy needed to learn that power is not as important as purpose. You are wise, Grace said. It is too bad you will not live forever. Humans do not live as long as we do. Grace smiled slightly. That is what makes us dangerous, she said. We know we do not have forever, so we fight harder, we dream bigger, we refuse to accept that some things cannot be changed. 1 year later, Grace stepped down as Earth's representative in the Federation. A younger woman named Sophia took her place. Sophia had grown up hearing stories of the war, hearing about the stand that humanity had made. She carried that knowledge into the Federation chamber. Grace returned to Earth. She went to a small house near the ocean. She spent her days walking on the beach, writing her story, remembering. But the galaxy remembered too. In schoolrooms across 100 worlds, young beings learned about the planet Earth. They learned about the species that refused to wait. They learned about how a civilization barely 80 years into space had changed the course of galactic history. And in the Federation chamber, humans sat as equals alongside beings who had ruled for millions of years. Humanity did not claim to be special. Humanity did not claim to be superior. But humanity had proven something important. Humanity had proven that courage is not about how powerful you are. Courage is about being willing to stand alone, knowing that others might join you. Grace sat on a beach on Earth and watched the sun set over the ocean. The sky turned orange and red and purple. Somewhere above those clouds, humanity's ships were traveling between worlds. Somewhere above those clouds, humans were building new things, creating new art, falling in love, having children, living lives of purpose and meaning. She thought about the empty seat at the old Galactic Council. That seat had been meant to show humanity's place. That seat had been meant to remind humans that they did not belong in the highest circles of power, that they should wait for approval, that they should accept limitations. But Earth had never sat in that seat, and now there was a new table, a table without a head, a table where every being had equal voice. And humanity sat at that table, not asking permission, not waiting for approval, but sharing the responsibility of building a better galaxy. This was what freedom looked like. Not victory over others, not domination, but the chance to build something new, the chance to work together, the chance to dream and then to make those dreams real. The sun fell below the horizon. The stars came out. In the darkness above, the galaxy spun on, changed forever by the courage of a young species that had simply refused to wait. World that was damaged but alive. They came out into a world that was changing. Daniel stood in the command center and watched the screens show peace instead of war. Around him, soldiers who had fought so hard began to cry. They had survived. Humanity had survived. And across the galaxy, billions of beings of every shape and size looked at each other and realized something new was beginning. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of the Galactic Federation was beginning. And it had started on a small blue world called Earth, where people had simply refused to accept someone else's rules. In the weeks that followed, the Council sent its largest fleet yet toward Earth, but other fleets moved to defend. They sent ships, they sent their warriors, they sent their technology experts. A new alliance was forming, not based on fear or conquest, but based on the shared dream of freedom. The galaxy trembled with the coming conflict. But for the first time in thousands of years, there was hope. And that hope had come from a small blue world called Earth, where people had simply refused to accept someone else's rules. We won, she said simply. Daniel shook his head. We won a battle, but the war is coming. That was just a test. Now they know we can fight. Now they will send something worse. Outside, the sun was rising over Earth. Billions of humans were waking up to a new world. The universe knew now that humanity was not a species that would bow. Humanity was a species that would stand and fight for what it believed in. And somewhere in space, the Galactic Council was preparing its next move. Grace watched the ships disappear into the stars. She thought about all the humans who had ever refused to accept someone else's rules. The people who had fought for freedom. The people who had built civilizations from nothing. The people who had reached for the stars when everyone said it was impossible. "Now we show them what we are made of," Grace said simply. "Now we prepare for anything." The sun was setting over the platform. The wind carried the sound of voices from the city. Somewhere in space, the Galactic Council was preparing its response. And on Earth, humanity waited, no longer asking for permission, but ready to fight for what it believed in.